Welcome to another episode of Becoming a Techno Wizard. And today we are continuing our series on a new story of humanity, a article in my newsletter, the Journal of Techno Wizardry. And of course, this section we're talking about science and technology, whether or not we have capitalism and hierarchy to thank for the scientific and technological advancements that we so enjoy today. Spoilers. Don't. Not really. But last section we talked about what's the section called? Environment of freedom and what freedom looks like and why a lot of the freedom that we have today is not free. So now we're going to get into science and technology, and this specific part is just a short section, so there's going to be some director's cuts. Um, but the next couple sections all kind of structure around this kind of topic. So tune in. But let us begin. Without further ado, I should say. Many people love to point to scientific and technological progress as justification for all of the abuse of power that got us to this point. As if we don't have, as if we couldn't have gotten here without being tyrants, or excuse me, capitalists. But here's the thing: science and technology is not a result of capitalism or any other form of power structure, at least not exclusively. In fact, I like to make the argument that science and technology actually has been handicapped capitalism and other hierarchical power structures. Science and technology largely progress either as a byproduct or despite the people in power trying to monopolize the power that comes from said ideas. Science experience is jump in progress only when the previous hierarchies of religious and royal power structures were in turmoil, i.e., the Enlightenment period, right? Furthermore, it's thanks to various public, open source, or safe spaces within companies or governments over the last century that was the prime drive for the most advancements in those fields. Sorry, somebody's calling me. Um, yeah. Um, so yeah, so mostly do these open source things and safe spaces and stuff like that in these fields. The game industry is a great example of this because it is one of the least regulated fields today. In the last 2 decades, as game companies became more profitable than ever, innovation in the gaming industry has slowed down drastically. Anybody who plays games regularly will tell you that there is less creativity in mainstream games than ever before. Battlefield. Indie games are where most of the new stuff comes from, precisely because they are led by people who are allowed to express their creativity without some boss telling them what to focus on instead. They are driven by passion, not profit. You see this in everything from MMORPGs especially to shooters, racing, and single player games. Even VR does not have as much innovative games as one would expect as an entirely new medium of gaming to allow due to the fear of not being profitable and the monopolization of hardware. The more our science and technology is dependent upon the need for profit, the less innovations we get in science and technology. You see this in the decrease in R&D spending, the decrease in patents, even though IP is stupid, the decrease in disruptive innovations, despite the buzzword, and the increase in monopolies, and so on. Most scientific progress is not done in companies, but in universities. And even those done in companies are only done in innovation labs, where profitability is not considered until after something is developed. But as soon as profit comes into question, all innovation and progress grinds to a halt as methods of monetization are configured. If it's not profitable, it won't be released to the public until it can become profitable. This includes the push for unprofitable growth because the whole point of scalability and operating at a loss is to one day recoup the loss, likely in a monopoly. Thus, thus is the nature of business. So yeah, this is a super short section, but then the next parts, go much more into this. But I can speak to more to this now because I remember when I was writing this, I had so many examples that I could have called upon, but it would be a whole other article, right? I can write an entire 20,000 word article just on science and technology. So here's a couple of examples. You can look this up yourself. The starting all the way back into the dawn of civilization, right? We actually see that one of the earliest collapse of civilization happened during the fall of the, I forgot the exact name of them, but like the Mediterranean kind of loop, right? You had, the early Greeks, or was it the Romans, I don't know, one of those. This folks in the Middle East, and then you had the North Africa with Morocco, Egypt, Somalia, Ethiopia. You had all these places around the Mediterranean Sea, um, and that was like what 1100 BC. Like, yes, like super early, right? Like 2000 years ago at least. They were like the big shots. They had and the early levels of, or the early kind of versions of globalization, in that they facilitated trade between, that entire area, between much of the Eurasian continent, really the Eurasian African continent, right? Anyway, they had super amazing, ships and farming techniques and pottery and art and all sorts of other technologies at that time, for that time. And then something happened, some collapse happened. It's not clear exactly what. Some of the leading theories is a combination of drought, um, due to, over farming and things like that. Um, Immigration from that drought, which caused more problems in the places that was left over. Earthquakes, which destroyed a lot of the infrastructure they had in place and stuff like that. Um, Famine and things like that. Yeah. So it was a constellation of things that happened. But after that time, right, immediately afterwards, you see a decline in everything, from their art, their science, their technology, their trade, even a diversity in culture, right? You see a decline in all of that, right? As soon as that happened. So what facilitated the science and technology was the open trade that they were doing at that time, right? And then afterwards, after that collapse, you started seeing an increase in empire building, right, and colonialization and stuff like that. And that was kind of like the first kind of dark ages of that time. The same thing happened in the dark ages that people are familiar with throughout Europe, right? The dark ages of Europe happened. Primarily it was this like monopolization of power, right? Where you had these people in power of everything, and you see a decline in a lot of the art and science and things like that. And afterwards, during the Enlightenment period, right, which was introduced by them coming to the Americas and hearing ideas about what freedom looks like from the Native Americans, you know, they developed this idea of democracy that they claim was from Greece, but really it was from many of the Native Americans, and you can tell that because the Greek democracy was very different, than what was actually established. That was what we have today. The version of democracy we have today is kind of a bastardization of the Native American democracy as opposed to the Greek democracy. Um, because remember, the Greek democracy, was unique to specific classes of people. Um, or granted, the early American was like that too. This is how we, this is why one of the reasons why we changed. But anyways, these are different examples of how, science and technology actually increased when you had less power structures in the way, right? During the 19th and 20th century, or 20th and 21st century, right? You see this again. The early internet was super innovative. A lot of the changes that we've seen in computer science happened not in the private sector, but in the public or government sector, right? Where you had all these universities coming together to form things. Um, what's his name? Um, Terrible with names, but go look up the mother of all tech demos. Let me see if I can pull it up here. He called out a lot of the stuff that that we are just now implementing into the internet. Of all tech demos, I realize you can't see my screen, but um, yeah, there we go. Douglas Engelbert, right? So that was, he was one of the main kind of visionaries there, and you had a lot of other people in that time, of course, too. Um, And these technologies were happening because it was open, because it was a lot of sharing of information. Didn't really care about hierarchy, right? About trying to monetize and privatize things. AT&T, right? With Bell Labs, the development of the phone and internet system that we have today is thanks to them with having this big R&D lab where anything goes. They're like, let's completely, let's not worry about how you would monetize this. Let's just think about if you had to remake the phone system, right? If you had to remake the phone system, how would you do it, right? Um, yes, they had a monetary limit. They say if you only had this amount of money, like $1 million or something like that. So it wasn't like pie in the sky. They still wanted to make it practical, but it wasn't. They didn't concern themselves with how can we make a phone system that we can profit upon, right? That only came afterwards. And the important point there, people claim that profit is what motivates innovation, but that's not really true. If you ask almost any like inventor, creator, even innovator, their their desires, their intent is almost always to a passion of wanting to see the world in a better place, right? The money is just something that they need, right? Or that they can benefit from, because our current society limits what you can do without money. If you can live in a world where you didn't need money, you wouldn't care about money, right? It's a circular reason to say, it's a circular argument to say, money money motivates change or innovation or whatever. When in reality, once you have people in a position where they don't need money anymore, they don't care about it, right? Most people. Of course, you have the billionaires out there, but they are, again, they don't even care about the money. They care about the status, the influence, the power that they have, right? Money is almost always um a sort of proxy for power, right? For freedom. And that's the problem. That is the fundamental problem with capitalism, is that is a proxy for power and freedom. If you don't have money, you don't have freedom, you don't have power. And that's a bad thing. That's not how we should be designing our society. But yeah, like I called out the MMO industry, or the gaming industry, because it really is like one of the people who love to say, "Oh, right, it's because we have regulations. That's why we don't see the innovation," right? But in gaming, you have very little regulations. All right, just now they're starting to be like, okay, maybe we should regulate, freaking gambling, right? Freaking uh, um, loot boxes and stuff like that, because it's gambling mechanics. But for longest time, there was pretty much no innovation. You can do whatever you want. You had little ratings things, but even that wasn't really regulated that much. um so you could pretty much do whatever you want. And you see a huge amount of mess in the gaming industry because of this, right? It shows you the kind of case study for why unregulated capitalism doesn't really make sense, right? Anybody who's a gamer will tell you, no, like a lot of these big AAA gaming companies, they don't make great games all the time, right? They're too busy trying to make another game every year, like Assassin's Creed, and it kind of declines. It's only when they take their time, let the creatives in the industry, creatives in the company actually, spend some time trying to create something that they care about, that they love and enjoy. That's when you come up with the great version of Assassin's Creed, or a great God of War, or something like that, or Elden Ring, right? When they take their time and think more about like just making a great game, as opposed to making something they can monetize. Another example of this is what's happening now in the gaming industry with crypto. Right? Crypto is a really amazing type of technology, and I think it can do amazing things. But it's largely made today for this stupid idea of spectating, of making artificial scarcity. Like it doesn't. I'm gonna have to do a whole nother talk about this. But like the very idea of artificial scarcity is dumb. All right, nobody cares about the fact that you have the only digital picture, right? What people care about is that you have a picture, an inventory item that you had in the game, right? Say I'm playing God of War and I did all this stuff and now have this cool gear. Won't it be cool if I can take that gear out of the game and put it on my wall, right? Or put it on my phone or something like that. Only way I can really do that today is like take a picture, or hope they release, wallpaper or concept art, there's no easy way to take my equipment that I earned out of a game and put it into my, wherever I want. There's no way to do that. That's where crypto can be cool. That's where blockchain can be cool. But that's not how it's being used, right? And that's not how companies are going to use it. They're going to use it to monetize and nickel and dime and make you just pay for everything. But anyways, yeah, this is why I really want to touch on these topics here, and there's a lot more I can say about this, as you can tell. I see Colin B in the comments here says, yeah, plus we can see actual decent games are made with horizontal organizations. Indeed, right? when Steam, when Valve actually cares about making a game, right? You see amazing, amazing stuff over there, right? And they have a horizontal structure. Now, granted, there are problems with their structure, but it's mostly due not because it's horizontal, but because they are focused on profit, right? So I've read a lot about their structure and their problems there, and a lot of the problems with their they have a problem with like forming cliques around different ideas or different games or whatever. And the reason for that is because they often won't do something unless they know it will make a lot of money, because they make a lot of money from Steam itself, right? But yeah, that goes into it. And then he also says, Colin says, Dead Cells is made by a worker co-op. Oh, I didn't know that. That's dope. That's dope. I have to look more into that because that's something I want to do. I want to form a worker co-op to make an amazing game that blows people's heads off, and they're like, "Oh wow, this is what you can do without, a capitalistic game." Yes, that's exactly it. So yeah, I love that example. Thanks for showing that. I'll look it up. But yeah, I ended there. I went a little bit longer, even though this was a shorter section. That's what happens when I get to talking. So sorry. But thanks as always for watching. Thanks for listening. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks, Colin, for coming into the chat with me and sharing, a few of these ideas as well. Let's have a discussion in the comments. If you have other examples, if you agree, even if you disagree, let's have a discussion. Let's see, if you have a point. But yeah, thanks as always, and have a great day. See ya. Bye.